In this video I have a stack of service manuals and odds and sods that I bought off eBay. There's a few original TV circuits in there I thought were worth getting. The rest of it was a bit of a gamble really, whether there was anything worthwhile. And that's basically the pile that's pretty much junk, which is about half of it. And the other half actually has some useful stuff in it. Some interesting stuff might be useful. Now the rest of it, yes, things like service bulletins. He did say there was a lot of hand-drawn circuits, which there are, so this guy looks to have been into service and repairs as well as amateur radio and stuff. But I thought it might be interesting just to have a look at some of this stuff, because most of this got chucked out a long time ago. You don't see it around so much anymore. And there's a few original circuits that come out of the 70s televisions where they used to put them in there. But this is one thing any service agent had a lot of, were these service bulletins. So they used to send these out if you're a sharp service agent. You got these on a regular basis. This goes back to 93, one of the early projectors. And we got a picture of it here somewhere. It's the... I actually saw it at a tip shop recently. I almost bought it just for old time's sake, but luckily I talked myself out of it. There is a manual for it here somewhat, I think, but these are a very early... well, relatively early LCD projector. Probably would have been one of the early ones on the market. And we've got a mountain of stuff here because it obviously had issues with ghosting. Some bit of metal they put on the lamp. All around 93, 94. There it is, that's the one. So it's an XV100ZM. Bit of an odd looking thing with speakers either side, made to be sort of portable. Probably salespeople and stuff were the only ones... people doing demonstrations and stuff, only ones who could really afford them back then. But this is a supplement to the service manual. So I don't think we have the original service manual here, but that's the ballast circuit, power unit, and this is another supplement, UV radiation precaution, which is a valid thing because, yeah, these metal halide lamps are not good for your eyeballs. They're even saying for your skin. Wear sunglasses when servicing the projector with lamp turned on and the top enclosure removed. Do not operate the lamp outside the lamp housing. Do not operate for more than 2 hours with the top enclosure removed. Yeah, quite a nasty bit of gear in a way, and that's the German language version. And yeah, very hot. Placement of the lamp should be done at least 1 hour after the power has been turned off to allow it to cool off. They certainly ran hot, and yeah, a lot of UV out of them that used to cook the insides of these things, especially like LG rear projection LCD TVs. Well, this is an XV310, XG3800. Some high temperature situations may lock into NTSC mode, so if someone complains about that, change some resistor. Be sure metal grill's been added on certain serial numbers, so they probably changed it in the factory. Replace ballast components, so the ballast was certainly known for blowing up occasionally, or if the lamp exploded because it was in there too long, sometimes just even if they weren't in there that long. XV310. Modification of the ballast units that have failed. Other than ballast unit failure, attach glass tape to lamp housing. Remove the shield plate. So this is pretty standard stuff they found out in the field that the factory didn't catch. It's a glass cloth tape. That's the sort of stuff you find on yokes in TVs and stuff, all around the magnet assembly. On the neck of a picture tube they put that glass tape, which is basically fiberglass impregnated tape, I think. Prove the reliability of the ballast unit. So there's mods on the ballast. XG3800. So this is probably some parts. Parts kit. Please refer intermittent operation from standby mode. To improve this phenomenon, a parts kit has been made available. So some bits and pieces to modify if they're having trouble getting it to come on. Some capacitor upgrades by the look of it. Or are they inductors? Inductor both have been added to the 5 volt rail leading from the power supply. 5-volt rail filtering. There's no effect to picture or sound qualities and added to improve reliability of circuits. That's probably something they again found and put in later builds in the factory. Cabinet and mechanical parts. So they've changed some bits and pieces in the parts list. So this is all the sort of stuff. Very rare you actually seem to see any of this stuff, but they sent it out anyway in case you did. Certainly some things had major issues that, yeah, the service bulletins would be handy on. Some are difficult to turn on from front panel, on-off button or remote control. Because unable to supply enough current to the 5-volt rail on the main PWB. Rail falls to 3 volt and causes the microprocessor to shut down part of the power supply. You once had a Philips TV that seemed to reset the microprocessor every time you turned it on, which would put it back in standby sort of thing. It's a bit of a weird one. Beat pattern when receiving a CCAM video signal. So pretty unlikely in Australia we would have seen anyone with a CCAM signal, but it possibly happened occasionally. So the leads can get pinched to the lamp. Poor quality ghosting picture at a delay line. Switch change. So yeah, just all the usual sort of stuff you saw. Chances are any out there still would have had any of these mods done. But then there's also ones that customer never came across a problem. Someone comes across it later, so they're possibly useful, but not something I really care about a lot. And then we've got some other info. Looks like he did some training courses. This might have been on the same ones. Metal halide lamp belongs to the high intensity discharge lamp group and is based on a 7.5mm arc from mercury vapor under high pressure. Typical of this type of lamp needs a high voltage trigger wire to start and may be difficult to start if bulb temperature is too high. Yeah, they don't like restarting when you turn them off and back on again quickly. Reflector is also a dichroic mirror, only reflecting RGB. So they probably had to put a special reflector so you don't get too much UV coming back, or even heat for that matter, I guess. 80 volts, they're saying someone's added a note that's an 85 volt DC square wave at 270 Hertz to reverse electrolysis. So this definitely looks like the sort of thing you'd get when you went to a training course. They give you a bit of a description of stuff when these new tech comes out. AC-DC inverter circuit. So without the actual course it's probably not a lot of use, but that's the sort of stuff they told you. And then there's a lot of stuff. This is about a voltage regulator in a Bosch 40 and 55 amp generator. Self-exciting diode rectified direct current generator producing 3-phase alternating current, which is rectified to direct current, 6 diodes, and then further 3 diodes to provide direct current for field excitation via the regulator. Because basically your alternator in your car is just an AC motor, and you actually need to feed, I think it comes via the warning light there, I think, or the ignition switch, and you actually got to put DC into the coils so they become an electromagnet before the thing will generate any electricity. When the ignition switch is turned to the on position, current is supplied via the indicator warning lamp to terminal D. Terminal D current flows to the rotor winding to the internally connected DF terminal. Where's DF there? Oh, there's the field coil. Current flow through the rotor winding creates a magnetic field around the rotor, and when the rotor is rotated, magnetic field induces a current in the stator. So it's the actual rotor part that creates the magnetic field on the stator that generates the actual voltage that goes to the car. So voltage built on the generator to equal battery voltage, the indicator warning lamp goes out. That's how you get your battery warning light. So there's should be no voltage difference if the alternator's working, but if the alternator's not working, your light comes on because it's not generating stuff. And there's a voltage difference. And then we've got the regulator Then there's all sorts of random, some of this stuff off the internet, it's probably still on there, some sort of little AM radio or something. That looks more like a crystal set. I don't know if that's all the same stuff. And there's a little radio. Not sure if that's an oldie or a new one. And a few of these things like Australian Electronics Monthly Project, which I've got to finish scanning my ones of those. A CL alarm, oh, Clayton's alarm. I think that's just to put in your car your immobiliser warning light that isn't actually hooked to anything else. Some IC telefunken you can probably find online, so they're pretty much going in the recycling. Schematic of, some of these are just unlabelled. We've got crystal frequencies, so it's probably a two-way microphone. Yeah, I think that's your click to talk switch, or mic and speaker. No, it is just a microphone, isn't it? It's 4-pin connector, front end. So that's probably a CB radio of some sort. And I think some of these were the projector. Model A3XV100ZM. Yes, I think that's some of the circuitry. Again, looking at all the stuff. Possibly someone's either just been studying it themselves or gone to a training course. Linear amplifier for 11 meter. So yeah, again, looks it's been done on a computer. There's the old test patterns out of a dot matrix printer. What have we got? An Australian BBS listing. Bulletin board. 1989. The network connection. IBM PS2. Opus software. The Oops BBS. Ian Object. Opus, the Pound, and now called Stardust. The Red Dragon Inn. Zorro and the Draftsman. So yeah, a bit of old school info that probably have trouble finding these days. Some hand drawn. What's he got here? RGB amps. Looks a lot more like a computer monitor type setup, although it's got a power decoder there. Intensity and RGB inputs. Some old valve gear. RF out, RF in, maybe another linear amplifier or something. ANC Tronics prototype. It's ANC or ANC something Tronics electronic fuel injection system. Firing order. And more stuff on the back. Vid in, vid out. Yeah, someone's just notes on bits and pieces. 10 Hz to 50 Hz ring source. And a power supply, 45, 90 volts. That's a bit random. 455 kilohertz IF amplifier. Dual regulator. VFO. Yeah, just some more valve. What's this? The Miller effect to increase the effective grid to cathode capacitance of a vacuum. The increase in the effective grid to cathode capacitance of a vacuum tube because a plate induces a charge electrostatically on the grid through grid to plate capacitance. Yeah, sort of thing you'd have to know in amateur radio type stuff probably. Certainly when you get into some high frequency stuff, maybe it's a thing that's everywhere. Starting to wonder if this isn't this guy. AC Tronics, maybe that was the company this guy ran. TV to RGB conversion, horizontal and vertical sync. To TV, B plus, the horizontal input. To computer pin 8. Computer pin 9 vertical sync. So I wonder if that's for a particular thing. More test printouts. Looks like that's the head alignment, which is out. Well, who knows what that is. Automatic choke, 1990. Precision temperature sensor, oh yeah, and choke lever. My old Subaru's basically got something like that, but it's, I think the original one was a mechanical one on, and I put a new carburetor in there because the old one was stuffed. And it's a different type, so I had to change the inlet manifold. That's actually just got a temperature sensor on it, and then, yeah, some sort of solenoid thing on the choke cable, which I still haven't hooked up yet. I just use a clothing peg to hold it out until it warms up and then push it in, but I must fix that up one day. And I think the Hitachi carburetors had a spring that heated up and slowly did the auto choke. They were the better ones because didn't have to touch anything, no choke lever, nothing. Linear amplifier for the 11 meter band. And a down component diagram, 1990. More random stuff. That looks like a television or something, or partial television circuit, is it? Is it a light or a switch mode? Vertical logic map generator. What on earth? Could it be part of a sync separator? Burst gate. Could even be a projector or something. Although it's got a... don't know if that's a line output. Probably a switch mode. Switch mode transformer. Yeah, hard to know some of this stuff. Even guess what it was. That's more of that projector, I think. It's a dunked whatever, so it's definitely a sharp. Oh yeah, up the top it says V100ZM again. Check power to lamp. I can actually put a jug element on your ballast by the look of it. 43.5 ohms to get 150 watts. Yeah, as long as you make sure that you get 150 watt load on it. Lamp voltage control signal. Lamp doesn't turn on, then 85 volt rail stays about 300 volt. Goes to, yeah, because a lot of those things they tested if the lamp drew current, I think, and if it didn't, it wouldn't fire up or something. Don't know what that is. Someone's address and random notes. RF signalizer in RX mode. In FSK mode. What's that? Frequency shift keying. Handbook of ham radio circuits. Grotty looking old paper. Pentode. More linear amplifiers for amateur radio stuff I'll look at. 4046 is 386. I forget 4046, that was something you could use in audio, I think, because that's an audio amp, I think, LM386. Don't know what 2917 is. So yeah, a lot of random bits and pieces. Data sheet, Yagi antenna. More data sheets. PL something, your modification methods. Change binary program or micro monitor micro scan. A lot of O's and ones. The dreaded Blaupunkt. That's their address. I was never a fan of their televisions, but they were getting pretty old by the time I saw them, and it showed radiation cooled tungsten anode thermal arc engine. Oh, electric propulsion. Interesting bit of science, bit of Dick Smith catalogue. Does it say what year? Probably not. That's their data pages they had in the back, which were very handy. Someone obviously used that. Motorola computer data disc, 1088 edition. Looks like some data on transistors. I remember there being some old early transistor data programs just like this. They were pretty bad. The old Towers or other transistor books were more use. Yeah, that was early days. Yeah, I remember old DOS-based program of someone did a transistor replacement, so I don't think I ever really used it because it's just quicker and easier to use the book. What is this thing? Inverter module. Is that like a solar inverter or something? Don't know what that. Inverter PCB. Yeah, pretty much junk. Mostly going in the recycling. Oh, we've got some Demon They're the guys, HR Demon in Spain, that made the replacement line output transformers. This is a data sheet triplicador. That's your tripler, I guess. So this is an early Chrysler Phillips Pi. Don't know if I ever saw their data sheets. They did have a manual. Maybe these were in the back. I don't think I ever had reason to look at what all the windings were. Voltage in, horizontal output in, 18 volts, probably out. High voltage focus, well that's basically the tube, the EHT, focus screen, G2, and a couple of other different outputs. Yeah, that's an enclosed type, more modern. AM, FM radio, Philips power decoder. Yeah, again, all that's online these days. Keeping Goulburn District fresh. Well, I think that paper might have just been recycled. They printed over the top of it. Although I wouldn't use the other side. Parts layout for possibly a CB radio with a switch like that, and looks like a display. Could be anything. Some Sanyo data. That would have been photocopied out of the original books. Actually, that's a different thing again, I think. That one, that's a CDM something. Tape recorder, amplifiers and stuff. Good old 80s kind of era stuff. Pretty rare you saw any of those data books in Australia, but someone must have had them, I guess. Printed wiring boards out of it. Looks like a television. That might actually be a Sharp that I got a circuit of here somewhere. Looks very much like a Sharp TV board. And then we get into some of the more interesting stuff. I guess some of the most interesting stuff here is actually we've got the System 80 computer stuff. Get rid of that, that isn't it. So it looks like some original pages maybe out of a book on the System 80, which is actually a different kind of computer. Looks like this guy did some Dick Smith electronics stuff because he's got some stuff on their computers and answering machines. But what is it actually called? It's a... Oh, this is a VZ300, I think, because it's got a disk controller, but they did supposedly bring it out in other parts of the world for the 200 Dick Smith computer. Yeah, Video Technology Limited. If you look them up, they made the VZ series computers. There's a whole lot of floppy drive controller stuff and random bits, but what was the... I think it was a Video Wizard or... No, Video Genie, I think is who made the System 80. Was a rebadged... Was it Hong Kong computer or something? Yeah, this EG... Well, that's probably it. It's Electric Genie, I don't know. Something Genie 3003. So they were just rebadged for Dick Smith. But, of course, I can't find that sheet now, can I? But somewhere on here it actually said what it was, because these circuits were for that original machine. A lowercase option, some chip you can solder in, character generator or something. Well, I don't know if any of this is online anywhere, but some of that might be useful to someone. Oh, maybe it's here. No, that's not it. Or maybe it's on, there was a couple of sheets that were repeated, so I put them to one side. And the other stuff I've got here, a lot of this I've looked up was actually online. That, I don't know, some sort of computer, early computer or closed circuit TV video monitor, just a monochrome 12Z tube. Composite video in, and that's all it's got. So who knows what that was for, a DM210, whatever model number that is. We've got a national TC1401 circuit there. Assembly manual for what was a pretty popular kit. The little general purpose preamp. ETI, so it was quite a, I think it was early 80s or something. They sold them for years at Dick Smith. But one thing I found that's interesting, you can actually set them up as a tape preamp, phono, or flat various gains. So the RIA A for your phono amp needs to frequency response changed, NAB in your tape. Looks like that probably does as well, and the others are flat with a certain amount of gain. Quite a good little project because they sold a lot of them. And then we've got some answering machines. And yeah, this is a XK2800. I did look this up. Probably sold by Dick Smith. It's one of the sort of flat early ones. I think I've got a picture of it somewhere. March 83. That Dick Smith definitely sold them, but not under that. Is this modification for Australia approval? 83. Service Department master copy. Do not remove. Well, somebody removed it. Maybe it was eventually getting chucked out and they saved it. This is TAM Concepts International, which I think the other one was as well. No, it doesn't actually say. Telephone answering machine 2100. The Australian model. What does that say? Something. Tourist modification. Oh, laterist. I think that's what it says. Laterist modification. Yeah, Y2173. We can probably look that up and see if it's a Dick Smith catalogue number. And part of it chopped out. Oh yeah, we've got this stuff on the back. That's right. Yeah, 2173. Dick Smith telephone answering machine. It's a complex piece of electronic circuitry. Before returning your something for service, please use the checklist. Doesn't record all messages. Dick Smith Electronic Service Department. So I don't think I've ever had a answering machine circuit before, but really it's just a CPU doing a lot of it. Then you've got your LM1818 is probably some sort of tape record playback thing or something. Just a standard LM386 audio amp. Bit of logic there. Oh, that's a remote beeper, so it shows how that's made. Used to be able to ring up your answer machine and put a tone down the line. It would play back your messages. LM567, I remember those being a thing, but can't remember what they are. 4066, so besides the micro, everything's pretty standard parts. You could probably buy at your local Dick Smith. LM340 regulator, which is just like a 7805 or whatever voltage it's putting out. Does it say 10 volt? Well, that's a bit random. So maybe this is an adjustable one. Yeah, that was something to do with tones or something. Maybe that is the thing that detects the tone from your remote. Mic jack, and I think this is another one using basically, it might have been the same circuit kind of thing of it. Yeah, 2100, so that's a better quality copy from 81, so this is an even earlier one. Yeah, there's our remote beeper. So I can probably chuck that other copy away. I think I just kept it because it had the stuff on the back, but I have scanned anything here that I thought was useful. And this is our DSE, Dick Smith Electronic Hornet. It's just a two-way radio, not very readable. Is that the same circuit? I think that's the same as that other one. Well, at least we know what that probably is. Oh yeah, that's what this moldable circuit copy thing was, which is even worse, I think, but someone's tried hard to read it. I wonder if that came with the thing, or it's ripped out of a book maybe. Oh well, so I've got another copy of that, so I'll have to scan that as well. Another answering machine, 2100 again. And we've got some sort of TV circuit here. HMV, I think this might have been the old C211 221 because it's got these boards with these connectors. They were like pins that pushed in, like square wire wrap pins on the chassis, and then little sockets that went onto that. So I do have circuits for these things anyway. Look at these old BD 238, 237 vertical outputs. BC548 parabola shaper for your pin cushion. Vertical shift control. Yeah, rather old school commutating coil. At least they labelled everything well. Shaper. Noise gate driver. Old TBA 920 horizontal oscillator and sync separator. So they were the only really fully designed in Australia colour TV ever made. Not the greatest of things, but at least we actually put one out, even though the tariffs and stuff had been removed and there was no protection for the industry. This is a weird circuit. Is this more HMV? It's got the picture tube down here where you never normally see it. Yeah, it's looking like the same sort of board layout. And it's the old one with the twin tuners, so that would make it a C211. Yeah, EMI, which was the people who had the HMV brand name. What, a Philips 12U. This would be a pretty old black and white TV from memory. I actually remember that model number being a thing. It's actually got valves. Yeah, it's a hybrid. Yeah, solid state front end and audio and even video amp. But then we're getting the vertical oscillator. We've actually, even in the oscillator, we've got a couple of valves and then a horizontal output valve and diode, or two diodes and a valve. I think that's a damper diode, horizontal output, and that's your EHT rectifier, 1S2 or whatever they were. I can never remember the exact number. Yeah, 1S2. So I can actually remember the right number. 6M5, which I think is just about most valve TVs. 6AL3. What size does it say? What size tube in it? I had a feeling the 12 was a portable, but without a tube number, we'll never know. Yeah, solid state rectifiers and OC947 12 volt regulator. So chances are these circuits are already out there and about. Does it tell us anywhere? Mains voltage. CRT. Sometimes they put it in a list somewhere. So it looks like it's on separate boards around the place. Video amplifier, deflection, your CRT socket. Doesn't look like it tells us what CRT, so that's not much use. We've got a Sharp 2034 TV. I actually wrote that on there. That's my messy writing. And yeah, I used to have all the Sharp circuits, but I unfortunately chucked them all in the recycling. They're only photocopies. But I had all this era sort of TV, 510ZJT. So this is actually a push button tuner. There was rotary tuner versions, all sort of mid 80s era TVs, all pretty standard to work on. Oh, this is a camera, I think. Sanyo VEM and FVC P1000 Fisher. So I think I did look this up online. So this is the main part of the, or at least the circuitry part of the, here's our little CRT. So we've got a viewfinder circuit, which is kind of cool. What does it feed into it? Yeah, video, earth, and VCC. Probably doesn't tell us what voltage. Oh yeah, 5 volts we know because it's on the chip. Little mini flyback transformer, CRT, brightness control, focus, and what's inside that IC in these things. They're probably all very similar. V decoil drive. I guess it's the yoke coil driving thing. Vertical oscillator, sync separator, some sort of amp, phase compensation, horizontal oscillator, and probably just 2 signals. Is that our horizontal out? It would be. Double transistor there. Well, that must be the actual output though. Vertical output maybe. Or is that video output? Oh, contrast, so yeah, that's definitely video out. So this is vertical, it goes straight to the yoke. So decoil must be deflection coil. Vertical deflection coil drive. So it goes straight to it. Horizontal output needs a transistor. Oh, it's kind of cool to have an actual circuit for one. The rest of it's probably a bunch of big chips and stuff. Running all the rest of the camera circuit and some big fold-out circuits with waveforms, board layout, so you can actually find where the parts are. But yeah, I generally stayed away from camera repair if I could help it. And here we've got some original circuits. These used to be inside the TV sets. if I'm not mistaken, this is your normal Chrysler one. Chrysler 59.3 CTV chassis. I used to have piles of these because every TV from the 70s had them in there, and if some other tech hadn't already nicked them, they were still inside them back in the 90s. And these usually had a second piece sheet with them, I think a yellow coloured one, which might have had the, well, that's kind of got the tuner stuff, but that's a separate board. What have we got? An old A66500. I think these were the first inline tubes. Can we tell from the deflection? Should have, not deflection, the convergence should have much simpler convergence. They still got the old separate grids, and what have we got? We've got our cathodes, heaters, grid, and screen, I think was what it had. Then your focus. So these TVs had two different ways at the RGB, or three ways really, I guess. If your cathodes had good signal on them, you also had to check these grids and the screens. So instead of a single screen control, there's three separate ones, one for each gun. So a bit more primitive than a Trinitron and later inline tubes. And they had no black matrixing or anything on the front of the tube in most of these, just aluminium sprayed on the front with the dots on it, so not the greatest quality picture out of these things, and they were a bit unreliable. But this was basically just a Philips K11 with some mods and quite a bit of different circuitry, different circuit boards in it, but based on those TVs and designed by Philips as far as I know. 11th of the 3rd, 77, issue 2. And these are, yeah, the little modules that were on the boards. They weren't like the Philips modules in a little aluminium can. These were just open circuit boards. And some of them might have had a can on them, but I think most of them are just, yeah, longer, but probably almost identical chip and circuit as you'd find in a Philips K11. But those parts were generally reliable. It was all the high voltage section that let them down, and I think the power supplies used to die on those a bit. Dry joints all through them like everything made in a Philips factory. And yeah, the tubes didn't last the best in them either. But I think most people pretty much got their money's worth out of them, but not as long lived as some of the better Japanese ones. And this is, again, would have been found in a TV set. Well, speaking of the K11, there it is, K11A1 version. So this looks like the, yeah, it's actually got a remote control receiver. US ultrasonic remote control receiver. They weren't infrared. That's got a A66500. I think same tube as the other one, because like I say, basically the same TV. Definitely made by Philips, the tubes. And this has got the fancy digital display. 7 segment and, yeah, well, 2 segment for the 1 digits. Most of these just had click push buttons, like a bank of them that press one and unclick the other ones. These ones were the, yeah, it should have been the touch tuning, or it says there, touch channel selector, logic circuits, and the remote would have fed in there somewhere. Do we have the remote on here? So I actually should have the whole diagram, I think. Is that the, that's the power supply. Is there another sheet? I suspect something might have fallen off this even, but yeah, this one's been in the TV quite a while. They often ended up yellowed and the paper falling to bits because they sat at the top of the TV in a little pocket under the top of the cabinet and got quite hot. And here's another Philips KT3. Very dirty and well used. The ones I had were in better condition than these ones. But again, they all went in the recycling because I thought I'll never need them again. So it's an 02KH239. Should be like a 22 tube or something. V100, I don't think they tell you what it is again. I think most of these are online, at least these later ones. Local control drawer. So the little click out tuning drawer. Oh no, this is actually, now this is one of the fancy ones too. Infrared. Yeah, infrared receiver. So now I do have one of the infrared remotes for this model. It's a little basic black looking thing with hardly any buttons on it. So a few extra bits and pieces in that you didn't get in the standard. Did they make a rotary tuner KT3? I think most of them were push button. That's a KT3 2. Let's see what that's got. That's just a push button clicking bank of switches. Still doesn't tell you what the tube is unless it's listed on the side. This is a CP410 and 510. So just the same thing, but with simpler, just Varactor tuner in it with no fancy controls. And this is another very yellowed one. The original K9. So that's the old K9 single rotary tuner. VHF only selector. I did actually see a Swedish version, one of these someone imported, and I think that was actually a push button one. They did make later push button ones in Australia as well of K9s. A66 140X, so that's the early tube. Delta gun, same grid and screen arrangement for each gun. Yeah, not a particularly great tube. And they were the slow heating ones. They made a 410, which was the faster heat up one. Don't know if it really made much difference, but there were a lot of these TVs around. They sold them by the thousand, these things. And somewhere here we have a tuning capacitor that when it fails, it blows the back off the picture tube. It's those things there, I think. Yeah, it's got the dual. Philips was selling these as like all this latest technology. These are an earlier 70s technology, I should say. They were a bit out of date when they came to Australia, I think. They must have been in Europe earlier because it's actually got two BU108 horizontal output transistors because they didn't even have one as powerful as the 208 to actually do it with just one transistor. They used to die, of course, line output transformers, triplers all the time. Focus resistors that ran in this chain off it. I think the east-west sometimes the transistors that go. You can see your old Delta gun magnet assembly for your dynamic convergence adjustment. Well, there it is, convergence. Yeah, those were the good old days, but I don't really ever want to see one of those things again. At least they were pretty simple to repair, the Philips. They just weren't the most reliable. And what do we got here? This is a list, but I thought it was actually, it is somewhat a fault list, but I think this is a listing of what was in the Servicemen in Electronics Australia. I decided it's not an actual fault list. They used to put out lists of all the different TVs and what went wrong with them. Here we are, the HMV C211 212 was the first chassis, then 221. And that was the end of the Australian made ones. The horrible valve hybrid Decca 33 series, which HMV also rebadged. At least there's a few interesting old models there. The TC20 and 63 GE, which was a Hitachi rebadged. Generals, 3504, AWA, Q chassis, G chassis. Yeah, a lot of nice old stuff. Chrysler 5001, that'd be a... What's this? Bad convergence. It should be a 5901. Someone's done a typo there. 5903, 5904. That was a heap of junk as well. The transformers. I think the yokes might have failed in them. They were a terrible... Based on a Philips KT2 chassis, but far less reliable. And we've got a C43 Daewoo chassis. Saw many of those things. This is your sort of late 80s early plastic case TV. Again, doesn't tell you what sort of CRT, but yeah, they were a common thing for breaking down. Would have been sold as a Princess or something here, probably. It's actually got an 8-channel LED display. Maybe NEC, these ones. Not sure if they use that chassis. Oh yeah, that one I've already listed. It's a Pioneer car stereo, and it's already on the Radio Museum. 8300, 8000. Yeah, the CB radio, I think this is an unknown. Random CB radio circuit. They all look pretty much the same. Is there anything I missed on here? Maybe the chips will give it away. 5-pin mic connection. But it's just another standard unit. Does this have a... Did I see an LED display somewhere or not? Oh yeah, there it is. 40 channel. Could be anything. No, this guy might be a Dick Smith one. There's a bit of a circuit for an Akai VS240. That's a VCR. Never a fan of Akai videos. They always seem to be a lot of trouble, unreliable, and got weird electronic problems that could take ages to find. And speaking of that, we got the VS2226. That was an absolute junk of a VCR. And the reason was the power supplies blew up in them and were nothing but trouble. I don't know, was there some info? I thought there might have been some sheets I shoved in here. Some of their service calls, 92. No money, no job done. But there was a whole lot of mod sheets came out on these for power supply issues, and I still don't think they were ever very reliable. One machine I wouldn't touch second hand and sell again or anything. They were just a piece of junk. But I think they all went to the tip pretty quick. We've got a Yaesu switching power supply, probably online. Technics, I think that was online. SA424 hi-fi engine or something's got that one. I think it's a radio amplifier type receiver thing. So not a lot of use. FL2100, oh, that's a Yaesu, which I spelt wrong because I couldn't remember how, a Yaesu. Couldn't remember how it was spelt, and I was going to look it up and never did. But that can be yeeted because that's online. And this is, oh, that's that same circuit again for that. But we've got a board layout. I think I had that other sheet in the other stuff that I was going to chuck out. And the only other interesting thing is this ICS forms. This guy might have actually gone through. It was, I guess, the early version of online learning, but it was correspondence learning. They used to advertise a lot, I think, in Electronics Australia and stuff in the 80s. I can't remember what ICS even stands for, but it was like a technical school that you did by correspondence. So possibly this guy did something, but he's been recycled the paper. I thought that's kind of a cool old thing. It looks like someone's little thing they stuck on your door while you were out. So that's the sort of thing you'd leave if you did a service call and they weren't home. Second 88. But normally I'd just tell people the time, and I was usually there within 15 minutes of that time. You could sort of work out where you're going to be and how long each job was going to take. It was the best way to do it. Just give them a time and be there at that time. But that's all the circuitry. Like I say, some of this computer stuff might be of interest to someone. Of course, about the best thing in here is the computer stuff, probably, if it isn't already out there. And I'm not a computer person really, so... But I think that was $25 for that lot. So, barely sort of worth it, but I like a couple of these old Phillips diagrams. I might actually stick them somewhere on the wall. I thought they'd be nice to frame up a couple. They're not in the best condition, but there's a couple of original circuits there. Some of these others I'll check if they're already online or not. But nothing overly exciting. It'll be interesting to look at those answering machine circuits and study them a bit better. Because I don't think, like I say, I've ever actually seen the full circuit of one before. You used to just fix them by feel sort of thing. Most of the time they didn't get anything major wrong with the electronics. And yeah, a few other interesting bits and pieces, but that's what we used to get. I bought many piles of this sort of stuff back from businesses that had shut down. So it's kind of a bit nostalgic to go through a pile like this again, and yeah, you just pick out all the good stuff and the rest just went in the dumpster back then, or in the incinerator. But there was always these people's notes and odds and sods. But at least it's had a few rarer things that have come out of Dick Smith, so that's always interesting, because we never used to have access to most of that sort of stuff. And no local service agents, I don't think, so maybe this guy was a country service agent for Dick Smith or something. But that's what we used to deal with. We used to have filing cabinets full of this sort of stuff. And when you're starting out, it was really handy to have the circuits for this stuff. And even now, occasionally, even when you've got plenty of experience, it's handy from time to time to have the circuits just to find where things go when you get a bit of a weird problem. But after these sort of 70s TVs, things got much more standard around the mid-80s, and the 90s sets were very similar. So you just, once you knew what all the faults were in them, you really didn't need a circuit. Most of the later stuff I didn't have circuits for and never needed them. Occasionally I could go to a couple of the service agents where I bought parts through and stuff, and they'd lend me the manuals. So occasionally go and borrow one. Most of the time you just go and look up the part number so they order the right thing for you. If you couldn't get it from elsewhere, you'd have to get the original manufacturer's part. Always best to get the part number of exactly what you want so there's no mistakes. But the actual circuit's not so useful in the later days. But in these earlier sets, and that's why they had these, because people used to do service calls still, you'd have your circuit poked in the back of the TV, would help out the serviceman when he turned up if he got a bit of a curly one. But anything that was, you know, more than simple to fix, you normally brought it back to the workshop so you could work on it in good conditions on a bench, and you got your oscilloscopes and bits and pieces to test it. And you can sort of take your time doing it in between other jobs if necessary, if it was a really difficult one. But that's what I got from that lot. It's nice to have a few old paper circuits again. I've got a few others around the place, and anything useful there I'll scan it. And yeah, maybe some of the originals will eventually get chucked out, like some of this stuff that's online. There's really not much point me keeping it and having all this paperwork, but it's good to have the modern world where you can just have it all on your hard drive and not have mountains of this stuff. I think I have 2 filing cabinets full of service manuals and stuff. It was just kind of ridiculous amount of stuff you had to own, and that's why I ended up getting rid of it, because it just took up so much room. And really, other than a novelty value these days, I never was going to use it again. It's kind of a shame, because I threw out a lot of original manuals I had for this 70s and 80s stuff that I bought off other businesses that closed and stuff, and people that retired. So a bit of a shame that all went in the recycling, but the problem was I would have had to store it for another 20 odd years until now, and it took up a lot of room, very heavy stuff to move around and stuff. So I think I made the right decision, but it's nice to see a few of these old things again. And I'm going to do some stuff on the 70s TVs. Might as well do a bit of a record of what was sold in Australia, even though a lot of them have disappeared now. So some of these will be handy for that. But that's that lot, so thanks for watching.